Hello and welcome. Global capability centers or global captive centers have been around for almost 30 years in India now, and it's been an interesting process and a journey of evolution and change to the point today that there are thousands of people working with very, very high quality skills, understanding and knowledge of very, very specific domains, serving or helping serve customers with products and services globally. So what is that? What does that mean? Where do we stand here today? And more importantly, the platform that's been built or the edifice that's been built, where can this go? And I thought the best person to put that question to is Mohandoss Thulasidoss, who's a digital strategy consultant, who's been in the industry and an industry veteran, but more importantly is now coming up with a startup focused on helping people do precisely this. Thank you so much for speaking with us, Mohan. So tell us, if I were to say, suppose let's say you were working with a company that had 10,000 people, and 10,000 people into all the skills that they've acquired, maybe in retail or financial services or banking or insurance. What does that mean today in terms of that sheer value of that volume of expertise that's been acquired? And before we go on to where it can go.
Yeah. So that's a very good question. Here's what I would characterize the journey of all the GCCs. It used to be called captive centers, and then we called it GIC and the GCCs. The good point is it was work centered and value added work came along. And the value chain was a term used very often in the captive centers those days, and now it's called GCCs. And value chain is not traditionally we understand in a typical value chain. A raw material gets converted into a next product, sub-assembly, and then it's a component, then final product, and then finishing and marketing and branding. The value chain in the GCCs are typically a skill ladder. For example, you're doing only development and testing, now you do design, that's called moving up the value chain. You did certain transaction processing, then you moved up, then you are called value chain, moving up the value chain. So it was the journey of 1.0, which is very successfully done in global capability centers, is moving up the value in terms of work. So the work which is performed is a much higher quality, delivering tremendous value back to the parent. And that's where I characterize it. People will call it as staff augmentation to team to innovation centered, but everything, if you look at it, the axis around which is worked on was the work itself.
Give us an illustration from your own experience or otherwise which shows this evolution and journey.
Yeah. So if you are abstracted at the industry level, typically if you take IT as an example, most of the initial work were around development and testing of the existing products. You do maintenance as it called. Then subsequently it graduated to developing new stuff, the new features which can help in business. Then it graduated to even doing design and architecture, which are like the high-end skills within software development. But yet, what you're doing is delivering to a specifications, except that you are moved up in the skill ladder to deliver value to the parent.
Right. And if you were to apply that more specifically in the case of, let's say, banking and service that you provide to banking. I was talking to one of the other banks, and they were saying, for instance, that they brought down the time to deliver a mortgage from days and months, maybe in the very distant past, to minutes.
Yeah, yeah. So that's a great point. That's also an evolution of certain global
and
capability centers.
Sitting somewhere else.
Somewhere else, yes. So from the work itself, initially when you are in a staff augmentation mode, you know a little piece of the work. When it comes as an integrated whole, you do understand the metrics at which the work is measured.
Right.
And thereby you can actually cut down your mortgage lending time, or you can improve the risk characteristics when you lend. Or if you're talking of energy companies, now you are understanding what the portfolio of assets that you have. If we talk of a retail company, do you understand the customers better so that you can customize it? You can do the store layout better. So different industries have different outcomes around the micro, which I called it at work, and it got expanded with multiple roles being played. You can actually truly deliver on the metrics for that specific process.
Right.
And that's the graduation so far.
In that example I quoted, and I'm sure in the ones you're quoting as well, there's increasingly there's an element of artificial intelligence and maybe blockchain in some cases, but generally the more digital inputs, so to speak. How is that? How geared are we to build on that further with all this knowledge and skills that we referred to earlier, as a country, as a pool of highly skilled manpower?
I think from a raw material standpoint, Govind, we have tremendous skills. So we got a very good mathematical background. So if you're strong in mathematics, then you're strong in artificial intelligence, and you're strong in cryptography, which is the underpinning for a blockchain, if you will, right? So those are the positive aspects. But can I shift gears and say where the potential is for the global capability centers to head? The way the global capability centers can head is to contribute to the very strategy of the firm. Because if you look at the companies across the world, they are at sort of a crossroads. Crossroads because of two reasons. One, changing customer expectations. Ever since the iPhone came out in 2007, we entered into an era called democratization of technology. The technology in the hands of consumers is superior to the technology used at business. Remember the times between 86 I started working to 2006, it was not the case. And that's led to what is called BYOD in corporate. Bring your own device because your device is more powerful than the device the corporate had. With the democratization of the technology, the power has shifted to the consumers, right? So now the choice available with the consumer is significant, and that is one. So the changing expectations of customer is significant in business. The second which is happening is the startups are coming in and capitalizing on that experience delivery. So if you are holding a massive company in whichever industry, whether it's a banking industry or whether it's energy or whether it's retail, now it is incumbent on you to deliver that experience. And when you want to deliver that experience to the end customer, two skills come about, right? One, what do you need to deliver and why do you need to deliver? That's one bucket. Second is how do you need to deliver? What capabilities you need to build? The second is not a great concern in my mind. But if we don't address the first, the second will be directionless in my mind, right? So the moving forward, the future of the global capability centers will be on three dimensions in my mind. You got to sustain, you need sustaining skills. You got to run your day, the old applications. You got to have emerging skill or exponential technologies. You got to invest in it, but most importantly, you got to invest in consulting skills. If you don't have that internal consulting skills and reimagine the future along with the parent, because you're co-creating these futures, not that the US and Europe has figured this out. They're also in the same journey to figure out how do we address the customer rising customer expectations and how do you encounter the startups in the marketplace. So this is a grand opportunity for India in two dimensions. One is to move up the value chain on the technology skills, which we did in the 1.0 version of the GCC, but most importantly, develop that business skills and consulting skills to know what you need to work on.
Right, and how are we placed in that endeavor today?
Yeah.
When you look at the landscape as you cast your eyes over
I think the foundations are there, but the change in the leadership mindset is a must in the GCCs. That's a transition. It's not that the GCC leadership is not capable of it, they are capable of it, but the mindset to move away from running a center and running people with skills to truly integrated organization to deliver the future for the enterprise, right? So it should start at the leadership level. So we can't point the fingers down and say, hey, you build the skills. And that's where the mindset change is going to happen. The point that you raised, Govind, about these skill sets of the people on AI and blockchain, yes, we need to address it, but I would put if you have to index it on it, I would index it on the former.
Which is leadership.
Leadership.
Right. So, but that's also a positive spin on the matter, because you're saying that we have the capability and the ability to do so and do so quickly.
Yes.
And scale up and meet global needs. Okay. So if I were to now ask you to look at it from the other side, what is India's perception? We all know what it is, but how does India stack up today against its competition? I mean, competition could be East Europe or China or other Southeast Asian countries in this space.
So I would direct answer to your question is India stacked up very well, right? And that's the evidence of that is all the GCCs here. But I will flip it around. The GCCs here should not see China and Europe as a competitor. You are part of the extended enterprise. If certain work needs to go to Eastern Europe or China, we should facilitate that. Because ultimately, if we take that the cap of a thinking hat for the betterment of the enterprise, in the long run, it will do good for the enterprise, and what is good for the enterprise is also good for GCC, and what is good for GCC is also good for India as a country. And that transition and what I just alluded to before about the leadership centeredness about the business becomes the two critical vectors in my mind.
So when you say leadership, and if there is, let's say, more emphasis on leadership and the right leadership and entrepreneurial leadership, which many people have referred to, it also means in some ways that the parents have to maybe let go, and it simultaneously bring in to closer to the core. So how is that likely to pan out?
So it's oft repeated management quote, right? Accountability is given and ownership is taken, right? Nobody is going to give it to you on the ownership. But having said this, if you work for a large company, you have to handle it in a nuanced way. And I'm sure the leaders are capable of handling it in a nuanced way, but you got to take that bold step to take the ownership. Because you are running a technology, analytics and operations in vast majority of the cases. And now this famous phrase by saying the back office is a new front office, meaning the technology capability is doing the marketing, the technology capability is doing the targeting, the technology capability is doing segmentation. So the back office is truly the new front office of the future, and you can't play a passive role in that landscape. And it's going to get accelerated with exponential technologies taking shape over the next decade.
Right. Last question. So we obviously also have a startup ecosystem, right? And in the technology side, product services. How do you see that integrating into this objective or these set of objectives, and where could that go?
Oh, it's huge. It's huge. India is arguably one of the fastest growing startup ecosystem on the exponential technology, be it artificial intelligence, blockchain, crypto. And ever since I've been doing this digital strategy consulting, in the last 2 weeks, I've met a number of them, evaluating them to come on the advisor board of some of the companies. I was pleasantly surprised the kind of progress these companies have made. From the GCC standpoint, they need to be a little more tolerant in terms of allowing them to come and do POCs, right? They may fail in some and they may not, they may succeed in some, because it actually helps in 2 dimensions. Dimension 1 is you are demonstrating back to your parent about the capabilities exist in the cutting edge. The best way to do that before you hire tons of people is to show the capability through startups. Second is, if you encourage the startup ecosystem, it feeds more into the talent ecosystem. This is a huge play. India has certainly moved away from services only landscape to services and products. Even within products, the trend I've seen is 80% of the products are going to be in engineering innovation, but the 20% is coming even in the science innovation, where they are inventing the algorithms themselves.
Right, and that's a very positive and wonderful note to end on. Thank you so much for speaking.
Thank you very much
all the
for your
best
time.
with your startup.
Thank you.
Thank you.